Yo, what's up, everybody?
Skyman are tapping the fuck in.
And if you haven't heard already, hype as fuck, baby. Let's go.
It's your boy Ace Outlier. We're about to get hype as fuck.
What it do? This is TSD Chris with Trap Star Dreamers, and you tuned in with Hype as Fuck Podcast.
Hype as fuck.
Hype as fuck.
I'm hype as fuck.
I'm the bastard.
I'm G Blunt.
We are tongue-tied.
Yep.
And we are hype as fuck to be back.
What's up, Jesse?
I want to take a second at the beginning of this, and I just want to give you your flowers.
Gladly be kicked out just because you came and said hello.
Are you ready? Because I know I'm ready. Are you ready to get hype as fuck?
Hype as fuck.
Hype as fuck.
You're you're actually like our family for life. And even seeing you do the pod and stuff, like I'm proud of you. Like you're out there and like you do your shit. Like as soon as I saw you, I like wanted to hug you because you've been there for us. Like you're not just regular to me. You're Madback Jackson.
Well, shout out to Hype as Fuck Promotions. Shout out to Madback Jackson.
It's Mad Whack. Let's get hype as fuck, yeah?
Hype as fuck.
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 It's Rocky Rob. It's time to get hype as fuck.
But your boy Master K, be sure to tap him for hype as fuck. Let's get it. Jill.
Jesse, get hype as fuck. What up?
I'm hype as fuck. Let's go.
Fuck yeah, let's go.
Rawr. This is Tiny and you're watching Hype as Fuck.
I see me down there in the corner. Hold on a second. Hello and welcome to another episode of Hype AF. I don't know what's happening. Give me a half a second. Come on. Woo. Catch up with me. There we are. Welcome to another episode of Hype AF Podcast. I am your host, Madwack Jackson. And today we have a music guest, surprise, shocker, I know, but of a different nature. So I hope you guys are Hype AF to meet Bobby. Oh, I guess I should have learned how to pronounce your name, Carra or Carra. Either way, we're about to find out. So please help me introduce my guest to the stage. Mr. Bobby, how do we pronounce your last name?
Carra. Just the most simplistic version of it is actually the
Carra.
correct one. Yeah.
Of course. Well, leave it to me. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, man. Thanks a lot for having me on.
And I wanted you to tell us your preferred title, I guess. Music producer.
Basically a composer. That's probably just the simplest way to put it. I'm a composer. I have been doing a lot of film stuff, so I'm a film composer, but I do other things as well. I play in a couple of different bands, and so that obviously goes outside of just the film stuff. And so I also play gigs and do recordings and things like that. But the thing that I've been doing a lot of over the last year has definitely been film composing. That's been a huge component of what I do. And every now and then a little bit of acting in there. It's not nearly as prominent as the composing, but little by little that integrates its way in every now and then.
Nice, real nice. So man, where to start? Let's start a little simple here. Where are you from?
I'm originally from New York. I grew up in the Bronx, and I've been living in Philly for more than 10 years, almost 20 by this point.
All right. And what got you started into music initially in the first place?
Well, it was a little genetic. I had some relatives who played, and then I had some relatives and then some friends who happened to have very good taste in music, and that kind of caught on for me after a while. And that became an increasing thing as time went on. I started playing an instrument while I was in high school, which kind of was late in the game. A lot of people, you hear people say, well, based on so-and-so fill in the blank scientific research of blah, 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 if you don't start by the time you're, 1.5 years old, you might as well just never look at a musical instrument ever and just give up completely. I'm exaggerating, of course, but I say that as somebody who has studied and gotten a degree in music education as well as composition. And while there's definitely some weight to that, to where obviously the earlier you start, the more of a chance you have at learning a lot quicker, it kind of dismisses the fact that even if you get started a little later, which I didn't start playing an instrument until I was about 16 years old. And I didn't start taking real official lessons until after I was out of high school. And so for me, to be that black and white about it, I kind of become, Joe Pesci and My Cousin Vinny, where he's like, everything that guy just said is bullshit.
I can definitely attest to that. It's kind of reminds me of you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and I disagree with that heavily too.
Yeah. There are definitely exceptions to it, and I didn't actually get into schooling for it until later. So I took a lot of private lessons, and I was predominantly playing bass and also guitar throughout, mostly guitar in high school, both instruments with an increasing emphasis on the bass after high school, because I just happened to be naturally inclined towards the instrument. There were things that I was able to do on it that other people had a hard time doing, and so I kind of just gravitated towards it. And I took a lot of private music lessons, learned a lot of the jazz theory components of things then. And then when I went to school later, I got into more of the historical and cultural components of music. I got more into the orchestral stuff. I already listened to that music, but I didn't really know how to compose it. And I also didn't know how to read music yet either. So those things, sorry, my phone's falling. Those things got taken care of when I went to school. It kind of filled in the blanks, anything that I didn't already know, especially when it came to the more orchestral, classical oriented types of stuff.
Okay. So, how many instruments can you play now?
Not that many, relatively speaking. I know some people who can play every instrument on the planet, and it's like, damn you, but probably, if I'm being realistic, bass is my main instrument. I can play guitar as well. I can play piano, but I'm not like a virtuoso piano player. I can play well. I can kind of keep up when it comes to certain stuff, but I mainly use it for composing stuff, because it's not like I'm playing it live and I'm layering multiple parts if I'm doing that, and for teaching as well. I can play a little bit of the violin, a little bit of a couple of brass and woodwind instruments. I can sing as well, but that's where I'm like, okay, I'm decent, but I'm not going to lie and say that that's like something I'm fantastic at. I can teach the basics at that kind of stuff, but where I really kind of really elevate a little more, and you can see, oh, okay, that I know what I'm really doing on at a professional level, is the bass, and to a lesser degree, guitar and piano.
Wow. Hey, that's still nothing to be shy about, man. That's the pretty impressive list.
Thanks.
So, I know you mentioned early that you were, you listened to a lot of the orchestra type stuff. So, what other type of music heavily influenced you? What other stuff do you listen to?
I listen to a lot of jazz and fusion, and a lot of old school funk that plays into a lot of jazz and fusion. That's stuff I listen to all the time. Since I was in high school, it became like my main deal of what I kind of put in between my ears a lot of the time. Guys like Jaco Pastorius, Weather Report. You would get guys like Chick Corea, Return to Forever, the Chick Corea Electric Band, Frank Gambale, Al Di Meola, John McLaughlin, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Shakti. There's this fantastic guitar player named Alan Holdsworth, who I listen to a lot. And I could probably just rattle on, but these were a lot of like jazz fusion guys who were absolutely fantastic and just masters at their craft. And it really influenced how I played. It really influenced how I designed, any kind of original music ideas I came up with. And it, of course, it influenced what I listened to as well. And prior to that, I was listening to a lot of classic rock and certain metal, which I still listen to. But now I kind of veer more towards the prog rock and metal stuff, like Dream Theater, Liquid Tension, Experiment. I like guys like Opeth, Persephone, Omnium Gatherum, Insomnium, Scar Symmetry. A lot of guys from Norway and Sweden. That's probably a good way to put it, you know.
All right. So you sent me a little bit of your current projects. So, all right, I'm going to stop. Hold up. Before we get too far into that, I want to ask.
Yeah, sure.
What about your band? So what type of music would you say your band that you dabble in? What do you guys make?
So we've got partially instrumental stuff and partially stuff with lyrics, and we play a lot of like jam and classic rock sounding stuff, and there's a lot of funk and a lot of blues that gets added into a lot of that. We've got every now and then we have these reggae and Latin elements that get thrown in there, and then I'll sometimes throw in some slightly heavier stuff on the stuff that I have more of a hand in as far as what we're composing. The name of the band is Dukes of Overbrook, which is kind of funny because I'm the one guy not from Overbrook in the band. And the other two guys live like 2 blocks from each other in Overbrook. And so I'm the one that is kind of the outlier. It's kind of like ZZ Top, where the drummer, his last name is Beard, and he's the one guy without a beard, you know? But yeah, we that pretty much sums up what we do. It definitely doesn't sound like the scores that I create for movies, because it's a totally different genre. We've used some of the songs in a movie so far, but they've been in like a scene where people are talking in a bar or something like that, and you need something on the radio. Then of course it needs to be just a regular song that's playing as opposed to the score. And so we've actually used some of our stuff in that respect, but not as a score.
Okay. That's pretty cool, man. A little perk of being able to if I'm saying this right, score or be able to, have control over the movie is you squeeze some of your own little stuff in there.
Yeah, it was the Hunt Chase Kill film, and I composed an original score for that, and that was all like very kind of combination of orchestral and synth oriented stuff. It was kind of a hybrid of those two things. And it's instrumental music. It's music that's supposed to help tell the story. So just having music with lyrics to where it's just a regular song structure is not always going to work for that. Are there exceptions? Yeah. But sometimes that kind of thing, if it's playing at the wrong moment, it's going to take you out of it. If you find yourself just kind of, oh, all right, I'm into the song, but you kind of have detached from the actual events of the movie, then the song's kind of doing it a disservice, So with that said, we put a bunch of the score in the film, like Paul Sutt's the name of the writer and director of the movie. He would send me the scenes, and he'd send them in a bunch of big chunks. So it would be like a group of scenes, not just one scene, because every now and then, all right, the music's going, the scene is ending, but that's not a good spot to stop the music. The music should kind of bleed over into the next scene and then fade out, or maybe not fade out at all. Maybe the music needs to keep going into that next scene. And so he'd have to send me like groups of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 scenes all in one shot. And so that would be, all right, that's the score. That's the instrumental component. It's, the idea of it is to build tension and make the movie as scary as you could make it. But at the same time, there are scenes that really don't require that. There are scenes where you need to kind of let the story breathe a little bit, and the music needs to stop. And in some of those cases, if it stops too much, it's unrealistic. Like I said, if there's a scene that's taking place, and there are some in this movie, where there are people talking in a bar or something like that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have some kind of music playing on the background. And so we purposely took some of the songs from the band and put it in there. We had been toying around with that, and originally he was seeing what bands might be interested in doing that. And after a while, I was kind of like, actually, Paul, I got a band as well. So if you'd like, I know I'm doing the score, I can provide some music for that too, if you think it'll fit. Because it's also the thing of if you have the wrong sounding music, again, even if it's in the background, it's going to become distracting. Like if you're in a bar, the music is supposed to be, let's say, really quiet, and there's this really important part of the movie where you're getting a really important reveal in the plot or something like that. What you don't want is a death metal song that's so loud and in your face that it's A, making it hard to hear the dialogue, or B, just distracting. And so in those cases, we had these like more jammy types of songs. It sounded like something where if you just walked into a bar, out in some rural, what have you location, you could realistically hear something like that playing. And that was what we kind of went for with that. It just happened to work out that the music from the band fit the scenario.
Man, there's so much that goes into this. I don't think people understand. But perfect segue into what I was gonna kind of ask and bring up next is you've mentioned a lot of music that you listen to, you've learned, and how did all of that relate into these projects that you sent me, which are very heavily horror themed?
Well, I two things. One, like I said, I also listened to a lot of classical, a lot of orchestral music. If you'll hear me say classical, but I'll always double that up and say orchestral, because for the musicians who know this that are listening, classical music is kind of like a slang term, but it really is an era of time. You had like the early and high Middle Ages, you had Baroque period, Renaissance period, the classic era, the Romantic era, and then what they call modern and postmodern era. And this is like all the different eras of classical music, and it's and kind of the different stylistic choices that went into those periods of time that would last like, so and so number of decades or centuries. And so classic era is a very specific time, and it doesn't always encompass what some people think of when they think of classic era. And so I'll say classical or orchestral just to kind of group all of that in there as like a big blanket statement. So for any musicians who happen to be listening to this, I got you covered. You don't have to correct me. But with that said, I listened to a lot of that stuff even before I started learning anything regarding music or how to play an instrument. And I listened to it even more after I went to school and started studying that stuff and how it was composed. And so that, combined with the stuff that I already knew how to do, kind of created just a very particular way that I liked doing things. And the other thing about me is, since I was like 2 or 3 years old, I've been watching horror movies, like, well, movies in general, but especially a lot of horror movies. And I remember I was like maybe 2 or 3 when I first saw Jaws. And a lot of people I hear say like, that movie scarred me, and like I never went in the water, or that, the summer that followed me seeing that movie, I wouldn't even put my leg in the water. It had the opposite effect on me. I was fascinated with sharks after that, and like would watch Shark Week all the time. And, I'd want to go to the beach after that because I wanted to see sharks. And it pretty much was the same thing for anything else on the horror elements. I started watching a lot of stuff that, if you grew up in the 80s and or early 90s, you were probably one of the kids that got away with watching more of this shit than some other people, And I was just lucky enough in that respect, because I watched so many movies, a lot of old school 80s action movies and a lot of horror movies and sci-fi movies. And, the ones in the 80s and early 90s and also late 70s for that matter were like a certain heyday. They were like this golden age of storytelling, cinematography, because we were still filming with actual film, special practical effects, and also the music that accompanied a lot of that stuff. And all of that had a huge influence on how I perceived things. And, it was something that stuck with me all through my life. I don't know if I can think of anybody else when they were like 3, 4 years old, that, who had John Carpenter's The Thing on a VHS and wore the thing down because I kept playing it over and over again. It was one of my favorite movies. I'd play it and watch it, and then I'd rewind it and put it back on and like play with my toys or something while the movie was on in the background. And I did that for a lot of other films as I, discovered them. Like The Terminator was a huge one for me, the original RoboCop, and all of these movies, even if I didn't realize very definitively then, all these movies had fantastic music added to them. And so it most certainly had a big influence on how I kind of perceived things later and how I thought of what would and wouldn't work in a scene of a movie. And so like, it was one of these things that I always eventually, after a while, I realized I like to really do. And I just, was one of those things of a decade ago, more than that, I initially tried doing that kind of stuff. Didn't quite have the software that I needed at the time. and thought it might be just game over because every time I looked at a project, they required you to have specific software that I just could not afford. And especially just starting out. And so a lot of time went by and I was just doing other stuff instead. And last year, or a little bit earlier than now, last year was when I got on the first project, when I first got attached to Hunt Chase Kill. And now the technology is kind of caught up in a way that I don't exactly need what was required 10, 12 years ago. And I can still compose just as well without, dropping thousands of dollars on equipment that I really can't justify spending that on,
Right. No, that's, that you brought that up. That's crazy to think about. You're absolutely right. 10, 20 years ago, what we needed to produce music of any kind was massive amounts of equipment and this and that and the other thing and all of this. And over the years, we've become so, advanced in our technology that ironically it's kind of shrunk its way back down, that we don't need as much and it's become higher quality. It's crazy to think about.
I mean, I come from an era where you needed to have your own soundboard. You needed to have a multi-track recording system if you were going to be recording certain stuff. And with that said, if you're going to be recording a band, you pretty much still do need that, unless you've got the digital equivalent of it, which in that sense you do still need it. It just looks different. But when it comes to working on a score, you can kind of get away with not having the most expensive shit out there, or at least when you're starting anyway. I mean, if I had to wait until I could buy thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment just to satisfy someone who says that's what you need when you don't, I'd be waiting forever. I already lost 10 years trying to do that,
Wow. So, how did you end up getting, being a part of these movies, and how many? Kind of a two-part question here. How many are you? I have 4 on my list, but you told me there were more. So let's start with how you kind of broke into this scene, and then go into how many you've been a part of.
So like I said, last summer was the first one. That was Hunt Chase Kill. I didn't start actually scoring the music for it until, well, I did some of the music for it then, but I didn't actually start setting the music to the scenes, except for 1 or 2 scenes I got real early, until much later, because the film wasn't completely done yet. They still had to actually film everything and edit it before they could send it to me. So a friend of mine who I'd known for quite a while and I hadn't actually seen in person in over a decade was one of the actors in the movie. She plays one of the main characters. And so she was sharing the funding campaign for it. And at the time I had like all but completely given up on doing anything like this, but I saw that and I was like, well, you know what? It's not going to hurt to ask. The worst that's going to happen is they say no. It's not going to be like a magical hand that's going to come out of my phone and shoot me in the head if they don't want me to do it. And so I contacted her and asked about it to see if they needed a composer, and she actually got back to me, and within 5 or 10 minutes she put me in touch with Paul, the writer and director. We got along really well. He did have some stuff already recorded, and so he sent it to me, and then I put music to it, and he really liked what it sounded like. And so from that point on I was on board, and then I visited the set on a couple of occasions. And from there, I met a whole bunch of people who ended up ultimately being on a lot of other projects, which I didn't even realize at the time. But because of that, and because of me being in touch with them on Facebook, it led to me being able to reach out about other projects. And, I had never done that before. So I was DMing people, not realizing half of them probably didn't even see the damn messages because they weren't friends with me on Facebook, because that's the level of knowledge that I even had about Facebook, let alone anything else, And so after a while, I put it in the comments instead. Do you need a composer for blah, blah, blah project, if they were posting about it? And sometimes I would be like, hey, I just sent you a message. It might have gone to your spam or something. I've got a question about the project. Just please check it out when you have a minute. And that led to, for every so-and-so number of people who either never saw the message, not to their fault at all, just, shit happens. And if you're not friends with someone on Facebook, they might just not see it. Then you get other people who will just ghost you and not want to be bothered. And then you get people who will just straight up say no, either because they don't want you for the project for whatever reason, or they already got somebody, and that, that's life. It happens. But for every number of people
there's the other possibility that has become rampant these days that I want to let everyone aware of too. Spam has kind of ruined a lot of opportunities for us, trying to make these connections online. We don't know who to not trust, or who is a human and who is, who's not, unfortunately, as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I try to word what I'm saying a certain way to make it obvious that I'm not a friggin' bot or anything. Like there's a part of me that's like, all right, should I just be like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Last Action Hero? Like, all right, here, hey, by the way, rubber baby buggy bumpers. There, now you know I'm not a bot. Here's what I have to say, or some other outlandish thing to just say like, well, I'm not going to forget that. And there's no way a bot told him to say that. But yeah, that is true. I have to kind of word things a particular way because I want someone to know I'm a real person. Like I'm not spam. So that does happen. But for every either lack of response or no that I got, I did still get people who actually responded to me, in a good amount of the time I got brought onto a project. And so that snowballed over time. I got attached to a few other projects, and one of them was Swine and Dine, which you mentioned earlier. That's a short film that also recently was released, and it's making its way through the film festival circuit right now. It's a short film, but they're actually going to be turning it into a feature length film within the next maybe like year or less. Or at least they're going to start working on the feature length version in the next year's time, or maybe a little less than that. So they've got me attached to do the music for that as well. So I've developed a good rapport with those guys. And there were some other projects as well. There was the Texas Chainsaw one, which is a fan film, and they liked what I did with that. That was Texas Chainsaw Massacre Badlands. So because they liked that, they ended up actually asking me to, because the guys who made it are also wrestlers out in Arizona. And so they asked me to do a wrestling theme, an entrance theme for them. And so I ended up doing that as well. And now I'm getting scenes. Yeah, and they're real cool guys. And then as of recently, they're sending me material for another film. And so as soon as I get more information about that, I can be a little more vocal about it. But my knowledge is kind of limited about it at the moment. But there are other ones I'm working on right now. One is the Goeita miniseries, and that's the one that I sent you the first episode of. So they made the first episode. Paulie Allen is the main person who I was talking to about that, and him and another individual, Caitlin Skinner. They're the two people who created that first episode. And so I spoke with Paulie, and he took a liking to me. He liked the music that I had, because by this point I finally had a page where I could show samples of my previous work. And that very much helps, because before that it's a lot more difficult. But after I got a couple of projects under my belt, I was able to actually create a page for myself with samples, which is very, very helpful. So he liked what I was doing, and he brought me on board for that. And they all really liked the music and how I incorporated into that first episode. So that first episode is available to watch on YouTube. They're going to use that as a proof of concept, because they're going to try to get more funds to film the remaining episodes of the miniseries, and to put as much into the production value as possible, and to also pay the cast and crew as well as they can as well. And so I get the impression there'll probably be a funding campaign coming out not terribly long from now. I know that their goal is to start filming the next episode in 2026, probably in January. And so in addition to that, because those individuals liked what I did there, that like snowballed into all these other projects. He's got a feature-length film called Sister Sullivan, which is about this cult of serial killers that I'll end up scoring the music for. And that is a sequel. They already have like the first film for that. And that was called The First Harvest, and they've got that on their channel. But this one's going to be a much bigger budgeted one, and they wanted to have someone score it, especially because by that point he had met me. The other film, the first one, they made a couple of years back, and they just used stock music for that. They couldn't get a composer for that particular project. But they also made this film that was kind of, I believe it's a prequel, and it's a silent film. It's called The Forgotten. And so they made this in connection with these other films, and they want to actually re-release the silent film. They've got like a version of it, and again, they've got stock music in there, but they also never got a chance to put the cue cards in there for the dialogue. And so they want to release like an updated version of it that can actually have the dialogue in there, and also will have a new score that I'd compose as well, which that's pretty cool. I'm get to work on a silent film. But the other big one that's all of a sudden like making a kind of a splash is Dasher Slasher. That one is also from some of the same people who know Paulie, but they've got their own thing going on, and it's about a serial killer who assumes the identity of basically a DoorDash type of person. He murders a DoorDasher and then starts going on that person's route and starts murdering people in their homes as a result. And so they just filmed the short film for that, like maybe 2 weeks ago. And so that'll probably come my way to put the music in it maybe in the next couple of weeks. That's my guess. But that'll probably start making its way through the film festivals. And I know that they have already been greenlit to do a feature version of it that's going to act like a sequel. And they've already got some larger names attached to it. I kind of saw some of the information about it, and I was like, whoa, wait, really? That person's going to be in this? And it was like, well, kind of glad that I was persistent and asked if they needed a composer for that project. There are some that, like, realistically, I almost didn't even bother, because in my mind, every now and then I get that imposter syndrome of they probably already got someone. They probably don't want to hear what I have to do. They don't even know who the hell I am sometimes. And I kind of need to just take that and like crumble it into a ball and throw it aside a good amount of the time, because almost every time that I've been like, yeah, fuck that, I need to actually just ask. Like, it doesn't hurt to ask. More times than not, it works out really, really well. That's pretty much what I've learned by experience over the last year.
Hell yeah, you got to shoot that shot.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, what's the worst that can happen? They can tell you no. That's it.
And
so,
under those circumstances, you move on.
All right. Correct me if I misheard this, but you said you've been in the movie part of this a little over a year and a half?
About a year. It's been only like a year and a month, give or take.
All right. And from what I counted just now, you named at least 6 projects you're on. So my question is, how long does each project on average take?
It really varies. It varies so much, and that depends on whether or not you have a project that requires reshoots. It depends on how long it takes for them to edit the picture and the sound. It depends on how long it is, because a feature film is obviously going to be way longer than a 20-minute short film. And it also depends on how much music is required. There was a project that I did that the film was only about 14 minutes long. It was called My Special Boy. It was a film about these people who were trapped in this basement with this deformed individual whose mother would bring her child friends, but this individual was very like primal and beastly and would usually end up killing the people that were in there. And so I composed music for it, and as I was watching the finished product, there was this whole middle section of the film. Granted, it's only like 14, 15 minutes long, but there was this whole middle scene that I'm looking at and I'm like, this really needs absolutely no music right now. If I put any music in this section of the movie, it's going to be overkill. Like, it's one of those situations of, all right, my ego ain't that important. I need to know when to back off. And not just me, that's just anybody in general who's doing that type of thing. A lot of the time, less is more. Like reverting back to Jaws, where, 2/3 of the movie, you barely see the shark. And that was out of necessity because the thing broke down, but it ended up being a much better film for it, instead of being just like a B-level monster film. And in this particular project, this entire middle scene, I'm looking and I'm watching it and I'm like, man, there are parts where I can picture myself putting the music, timing wise, but it's not going to do the movie any favors. It's going to reduce the quality of this scene. And in the process, it's going to reduce the quality of the whole movie, and it's also going to dull the effect of the music that follows in the next scene. And so, sure enough, the guy who was doing the editing on the timing and the color grading, he was also the cinematographer and also the director. They both were thinking the exact same thing, and we were on a Zoom call, and like I came out and said it, and they were like, actually, we were thinking the exact same thing. Like there should not be any music in this scene, and so it worked out great. It was, first scene, there's this very subtle music that kind of picks up a lot at the end of that beginning scene. Then there's like nothing, and then there's this certain reveal. The music kicks back in, and it kind of lasts until the end of the movie. And it's one of these things that huge section of silence did the rest of the movie a gigantic favor, because it allowed you to just step back and take in what was going on. And it made every bit of elevating tension after that much more intense. As opposed to, like, if you're talking to somebody and instead of having a natural timing in their conversation where, like, there's a pause here and there, they lower their voice every now and then, their inflection changes to emphasize something. If you just had somebody who constantly talked like this all the time and didn't have any break in what they were saying, it was like, dude, shut up. Like, after a certain point, it's like, back off a little bit,
Yeah, no, exactly. Or, like mid-conversation during this podcast, I just randomly hit music for no apparent reason. That would be ridiculous, like, there's a time and there's a place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like that's
completely understandable. Yeah, exactly. Shoot. I know this is a hard question for everyone because no matter what the project is, we consider them all our babies. But do you happen to have a favorite project that you've been a part of?
There are, I'd say there are a couple that stick out. One is Hunt, Chase, Kill, because it was the first one that I got brought on board for. And not only do I really love the music I composed for that, but I made a lot of connections and a lot of really good friendships in that project. And I met the two people who were the first two people who gave me a chance when nobody else would. And I didn't even have a portfolio of anything yet. They decided to give me a shot, send me a scene, and see what I could do with it. And every now and then you will get people who are too full of themselves to do something like that. Under other circumstances, you get people who are too busy to do something like that, and that's fine. That's very understandable. But you will sometimes get people who got all the time in the world, but don't want to actually bother, and they could have easily been like, nah, we got it. Or, we already got somebody, even if that wasn't true for that matter. And they gave me a chance when nobody else did. So that's one of them. And I would say also a more recent one that I'm very attached to is Goeita, because I got to do something completely different with a lot of the music in that. It doesn't sound like the music from the other project that I just mentioned. I mean, for the most part, each project is going to have its own distinct sound, but this I had to do in a very different way.
Sure.
And if you watch it and compare it to some of the stuff from the other projects, you'll probably hear it. But there are some things that I have to do with just a piano sometimes that are very different than a lot of the other things I've done. And I have to build tension in a very different way because of how the story is told in that project. So I'm very much looking forward to how I'm going to do that with the other episodes once they start filming those as well.
It sounds fun, especially to have, that ongoing process instead of, just one and done type thing.
Yeah. There was a part of me that thought I'd be doing one film and that might be it. And once I realized that all these other cast and crew members had other projects going on, it was like that little, like the what if started circulating in my head. Like, and I had, at that point, I had such low expectations to be able to actually do something like this. Like, I thought that ship sailed a long time ago. And so it was one of those, like, man, let me at least try. Let me at least ask. It ain't going to hurt,
Mm-hmm.
It pretty much goes to show.
I think it's a good thing to, it is going to sound funny, but to have a balance of expectation. You don't want to have too high expectations because then you're just more likely to give up when you do receive those no's, you know? Whereas on the flip side, if you go in expecting nothing and you get a really fucking cool project, you're gonna be like, holy shit, like this is awesome.
I agree. You need to have that in the back of your head of like, all right, you might just be told no, or someone might already be on this project, or it might be something that the person just doesn't get back to you, and part of that time they don't see your message, but the other part of that time is they really, really obviously have seen your message or messages or whatnot, and they just don't give a shit. And you know what? That's going to happen. It's kind of like after a certain point, you're like, oh, fuck it. I got other projects I'm a part of.
Exactly. So what has been one of the hardest obstacles you've had to overcome in this business?
I would say, let me think about that for a sec here. As far as obstacles, a lot of it would be just making sure that I've got enough time to get things done. And I pretty much have gotten a good grasp on that now. There was kind of a self-imposed learning curve for the first few projects that I was doing. I do things a little differently now, not necessarily related directly to time, but related to stuff that can affect whether or not I might need to go in and correct something, which of course ultimately will affect your time. And I do things a little more in a little bit more of a foolproof way now, so that I kind of can eliminate a lot of the error that could potentially come into place, not just on my end, but on the end of whoever I'm sending the audio tracks of the music to. I used to give people the exact timestamps of where to drop the tracks in the film, and this was on like a couple of short films, and so it was not like I was telling them 25 different spots. It was like 3, or something like that, and I'd be like surgeon detailed as far as this is where you're going with it. You're going to see probably a little blip in your track of the audio with the dialogue. That's where you want to drop the actual music link and line it up with that. And it'll be at like 15 minutes and 0.4 seconds. But that can be a little rough to actually do on the other end. And so if every now and then you got someone who might not necessarily understand what the hell you're talking about, either because you're being too complicated with what you're saying, or because they're just having a hard time with it, and they know what you're saying, but for some reason they just can't get it to line up. I found the workaround to that, and have since just been using a second program where I've got everything in a way that I can make it one long track for a scene or a group of scenes, even if that means this 2.5 minutes of dead silence before the music kicks in. The beginning of the track now starts with the beginning of the scene, so you don't have to play any more guesswork.
You don't have
drop
to
it in, drag it all the way to the left, done. And that makes things way easier now. So that, and also just making sure that I have appropriate amount of storage and stuff like that. Like I know that not very long from now, I'm going to probably need to get another computer, another laptop, so that I've got some larger storage, and I'm probably going to need to get another external hard drive just to make sure that I can keep track of everything, and make sure that I'm not going to accidentally erase a bunch of stuff as a result of there just being too much crap in one spot.
Well, I understand that problem 100%.
Yeah,
I got like 9 Google accounts and the 2 hard drives. Yeah, man, I feel you.
Yeah, so that's where that was probably the hardest part of it, to be honest. That, and also just realizing that that I actually know how to do this, and not getting inside my own head, and getting to the point where I think, well, no, I'm not good enough to do this. Like, who the hell am I kidding? Because I get that all the time. That there's those thoughts that creep up all the time, and past a certain point, I need to just tell those thoughts to fuck off, or just ignore them.
They're hard to ignore sometimes, though.
Yeah.
They're good talkers. They're good at convincing.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's like the Russell Crowe beautiful mind thing. Look, I know you're here. I'm just going to ignore your ass.
So, if you had the opportunity to work with anyone, who would you want to work with?
You know what? That's a stacked one. There are so many people that have gotten attached to projects that I'm on now that I didn't even think was going to happen. So probably my best way to put that would be I can't zero that in on like any one person. If anything, maybe just simply because they're starting to reach out to a lot of independent filmmakers, it seems. But two people who knows, maybe I'll be able to get in touch with at some point down the road would probably be Eli Roth and Robert Rodriguez, because the two of them in their own separate ways are currently working with a lot of independent guys. So that's kind of one of those, hey, you never know types of situations. And there are others as well. I'd love to, as far as actors go, if we're talking a horror, there are tons of them, but because I've met Kane Hodder and CJ Graham at conventions and whatnot, and they're just such cool guys. That would be nice to be able to work with one or both of them at some point.
Oh yeah, man. What's your 5-year plan? Where do you hope to be 5 years from now?
Hopefully doing this full time. That's a pretty much my goal, and realistically, and from a practical end, I need it to be a less than 5-year plan. Realistically, I'm hoping that in the next year or two tops, that I can be just doing this full time. That doesn't mean I'm going to be making millions of dollars by that point. It just means I won't have to worry about having, a day job, and I won't have to worry about splitting my time up. Like if by a year or two from now, I can be at a point where just from doing this type of work, or this and other related work, I can take care of all my expenses, make sure my family's okay, and make sure that I can keep doing this and keep kind of, bringing things to a higher point, so that, yes, that pay rate will increase over time. Then I'd be totally happy with that. As far as like a year or two from now, not having to rely on the 9 to 5 anymore, and therefore being able to commit to a lot more projects would be great.
Absolutely. I think, man, I hope that for you, and I think we can all agree that's the goal, man. Just have a job we enjoy, right?
Absolutely. And one that,
because it's not a job if you enjoy doing it. That's what I've always been told.
I mean, it's work, but it's not a job, so to say.
Yes.
A lot of work definitely still goes into it,
exactly.
but it's good work. The other thing being that type of work I can do from just about anywhere, which is immensely helpful, especially when you got kids and you have other things that in our modern day and age don't jive well with having a 9 to 5, especially if that 9 to 5 has an extremely long commute to it or anything like that.
I'm glad you said that, because I did intend to ask you that, actually. So is that on most projects? Is it something that you can do from home, or is there ever an instance where you're asked to go into a studio or something?
It hasn't come up so far, and that might very well be because these are more independent projects. If I ever get attached to something that's larger scale, and either one of the higher budgeted independent projects, because you still have independent projects that will sometimes be in the millions in their budget. It's just not hundreds of millions. But I'm not close to that right now. If I get to that point, maybe that'll happen, but I have not had to. I am able to do all the composing I need to do from home or wherever I've got a decent internet connection and can just set up. I have the MIDI technology, so some stuff I like to do on a touch screen, some stuff I like to do on an actual keyboard. And that's, of course, without counting anything that I would be recording live, if I recorded any kind of guitar or vocal part or anything like that. And I'm not going to lie and say I could hook up a drum set or anything right now, because if I tried recording drums, it would probably sound like, someone having a can put over their ear, and then just having, someone with a real bad temper hit that can with a wrench over and over again, And that's just because of, setup right now. But I don't really need that at the moment. And if I do, I could always record in the studio where my band is, because we've got our own studio at the drummer's place. So I got that in as well. But I like to go to the sets though. I like to meet people in person. I can't always do it. Like when they were filming the Dasher Slasher project a couple of weeks ago. I would have loved to be able to visit the set and meet everybody in person, but it was a bit of a drive for me, and I had other stuff I needed to take care of that weekend, and I was on top of getting sick as well. So it just kind of wasn't in the cards. Notwithstanding that I also didn't want to get a bunch of cast and crew members sick. But even if you took that fact and threw it aside, it was a longer trip, and there were a couple of things I really needed to do at home and very close by. And it's just, it is what it is. Hunt, Chase, Kill, I was able to go on the set a couple of times. Swine and Dine, I was able to go on the set and meet people. For the My Special Boy project, I did the same thing. And those ones were within an hour from me. And so I was able to get there. There are other projects that I've worked on that are on the other side of the country, or even if they're not that far, it's still like a 3, 4, 5 hour drive. And if I've got other stuff going on, whether it be stuff related to a day job, stuff related to just commitments to my household, my family, other things that can't really wait, sometimes it's just not in the cards. But when I can do it, I like to, because not only do I like to meet people in person and get those connections better, but seeing how the scenes are set up, how the lighting is, and what the camera shots are going to be, and the tone of the film, and how the actors are executing certain parts, will sometimes help shape the musical ideas that I've got for that film. And I've literally been on a couple of sets where, because of that and what I was seeing going on, I'd go off to the side and I'd start just programming in stuff that I came up with on the fly right there. And so it does happen. I just can't always do it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, life happens, like you said. I only got a couple questions left, so I do want to take a second and remind my viewers, you guys are more than welcome to drop any questions you guys may have. I'm sure I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I do want to remind you guys again that all of these, not all of them, but most of these films that he has been a part of and is mentioning, I will have linked in the description of this video so that you guys will be able to go watch them yourselves, which I highly recommend. I have watched at least 3 of the 4 that we talked about, and they're good films, for being independent. Like you say, they're really good films. I enjoyed watching them. Wifey and I both sat here right after you sent them and spent the whole day watching your
Thanks.
stuff.
I appreciate that. And it's one of those things that some stuff will be just immediately available once they're done with it. Other stuff will make a trip through a bunch of different film festivals first. And then I know there are other projects, Hunt, Chase, Kill being one of them, for example, where they're trying to look for distribution. So they're trying to get it out on some kind of a streaming platform. So it's a little bit of a crapshoot right now as far as which projects are doing what. But yeah, there are at least some of them that just go right to YouTube, and so you can just easily access them that way.
Heck yeah. What are some other hobbies you got outside of music?
Another
movies?
big one for me is just exercise, health, and fitness. That's the other background that I've got. I'm also a personal trainer and health and fitness professional, nutrition advisor. So that's the other thing I really enjoy doing. One, for my own health, but 2, I do like doing that with other people as well. It's unfortunately one of those businesses where, especially now with social media, it's one of those things where anyone, everyone, and their mother and grandmother think that they can do that. And a lot of the time that is the result of Chat GPT, not necessarily them actually knowing what the hell they're talking about, combined with a lot of photo editing. And every now and then, if it's a guy, there's at least a 60% chance that a healthy dosage, or I should say unhealthy dosage of vitamin S is coming into play as well. But with that said, I do like doing that stuff. I kind of approach it the same way that I approach my music. I approach it like a friggin' surgeon. And so I'm very detail oriented with that. I'm not Mr. Salesman. I kind of wish I had the ability to do that as well, but it's the marketing end that I always kind of faltered with that, because I always, in my opinion, was like, well, the product should speak for itself. I shouldn't have to act like a door-to-door Mormon or something in order to convince you that I know what I'm doing.
Right.
And that's just my opinion on the matter. I would like at some point to perhaps start doing that stuff online at an increased rate, but I've seen the way that's done a lot, and I'm not a fan of a lot of the approaches, because a lot of those approaches are very cookie cutter, and a lot of those approaches involve a lot of straight up wrong information. I've seen so many ads for people who just have like an AI advertisement, and they got like their little generated men creating, doing like, don't do this, do this, don't do this, do this. And meanwhile, I'm looking at it and it's like, you realize that the don't do this and the do this are working two completely different muscle groups, and you're showing how to do one of them the wrong way. Like, just putting that out there.
I can't stand it.
Yeah, that kind of shit.
Yeah, AI hits. I'm with you, man. AI has made a mess out of so much. Yeah. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's fake. You don't know who to trust. Real information, fake news. I mean, it's overwhelming for sure.
Yeah. And that was something I did go to school for. So I know the science behind it. And it's one of those things of like, I've seen, for example, there will be, don't do the seated cable row as your exercise. Do cobras off of the ground instead. I'm like, that's a different part of the back that's being worked. One's working the latissimus dorsi, the posterior deltoids, the biceps brachii, and to a degree your forearm flexors. That's the row. Those little cobras there are working the erector spinae. And that's it. That's the end of the story.
And maybe that's how you should break into the social media on that platform, is just start your videos and be like, stitch them and be like, okay, first off, this guy is doing such and such and such. This is wrong, and educate these people on the right shit. Call their asses out. Maybe that's your niche, man.
I'd want to, if I were to do something like that, I'd want to do it in a way that wasn't going to ruin someone's life, though, or anything like that. And what I mean by that is I would, unless someone had some kind of animosity towards me or a loved one, I wouldn't want to put them on public blast, but that doesn't mean.
Well, I just want to put out there that AI.
Yeah, that's totally different.
It's not gonna.
Well, the thing there is,
absolutely.
I could always, if I'm talking about the platform itself, and I see a problem, it's not like I have to show a name or a face or anything like that, which would present itself in a way that might be very workable. It just would be one of those situations I would never want to call out an individual, especially if it's someone who's just working out or something like that. Especially, you don't know who that person might have relatives who see it, and now that person's embarrassing. You don't want to be that level of asshole,
Yeah, no. There's a level of petty, and attacking other people is not it. Absolutely.
Now, don't get me wrong. I've seen other ends of it. I remember seeing something that goes in circulation in waves every now and then. Is these fake bench press records on. I see it on Facebook. I see it elsewhere too, but it's really a big thing on Facebook where so and so just bench pressed this huge amount, and then you see the person bench pressing, and you know how a bench is nice and flat. Well, here's the bench. Here's what their back is supposed to look like. Here's what their back looks like. That's not an exaggeration. And they're like all super arched so that the range of motion has now turned into this. Like, okay.
That just sounds
like
painful.
Yeah, it's like a slip disc waiting to happen, and that's if you're lucky, that kind of shit drives me nuts.
If you're lucky.
It's like flatten your back and just lessen the weight.
Yeah, I do want to address this. I do want to address this comment right here. AI, Sunray says AI does drive me crazy. But it can be very helpful in some things, but you still want to be as authentic as possible. And that's the difference. AI, if you're using it in the right way, can be beneficial and can be helpful. But there's unfortunately so many people who have, found the way to manipulate
Yeah.
it and spread, like we're talking about, not real news, fake
Yeah.
news.
It's like the thing of even in music, you could use AI in a very basic, by this point, you could probably consider it primitive AI in a very basic sense with MIDI technology and plugging stuff in and programming and so on, which in very large part requires a lot of skill sets and a certain talent to be able to do. That's not the same thing as going into some kind of software and giving it a vocal prompt and then it's making the whole song for you. That's a little different. Like, whereas, now this is probably more than just that, but I still think it's in the same category where you got Spotify literally creating fake bands. Not just one. Now I think it's more than one by this point. They literally have fake artists and fake bands so that they don't have to pay the artist any money. And they were already paying their artists dog shit as it is. But now on top of that, they have to compete with fake people creating fake music. And I think that's bullshit. I think that is like the biggest level of bullshit. I hope that shit gets boycotted by the vast majority of our society over time, because people need to start talking with their wallets, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you guys, if you want a more rundown on what we're talking about, I actually shared an entire TikTok on my post on my timeline today, talking about this Spotify and how they are, basically putting their own fake AI bands in their platforms to take even more of their own money, in a sense, So yeah, go check that out if you guys are interested. It's interesting. It's interesting.
It's like
It's pretty
you ever
sad.
see that movie Simone that's got Al Pacino in it?
More than likely, if it's got Al Pacino, my wife's kind of
Oh,
got a
okay.
thing.
It's the one where he's a filmmaker and he's given this technology where it's basically AI, and he has an AI actress. It's a fake actress who's a computer program, and he plugs her into these movies, and she ends up winning these, like an Oscar and all this other stuff. And it's obviously a social commentary of a film. And throughout the film, the fake actress that nobody else knows is fake is getting more recognition than him as a filmmaker, and it starts pissing him off after a while. And so he starts doing shit to try to make her get herself in trouble, so to say, and people start loving her even more for it. It's very, very much a social commentary. Not like his best film or anything like that, but it's an interesting film. And you see that kind of thing or versions of that happening now with businesses, with music, with the arts. It is absolutely insane. And it's one of these, man, we had a lot of movies and books and stuff over the course of time warning humanity about this bullshit, and people just decided to completely put the blinders on, and they're like, hey, I don't care, that's cool. Like,
Yep.
it's like in the
it's
like the
amazing.
Malibu Stacy thing in The Simpsons. You know what I'm talking about by chance? We're like,
Yeah. Oh, there's so much with The Simpsons, and that whole generation of movies that you mentioned earlier, the 70s and 80s. So many of those movies, kind of looking back on them, are they were warnings. They still are warnings, in a sense. Terminator, the whole thing is talking about how these computers are going to take over, and then you have iRobot, and then you have my favorite, of course, Jurassic Park, which we're still trying to bring these creatures back, and we have 6 movies about how stupid that is.
And
Like,
I can't help it, like, in this very South Park like sense, but think of the people who see all these warnings and are the people behind all this stuff. And a good chunk of the time, this wouldn't be everybody, but it would definitely be the ones who are signing the paychecks. Other than just seeing dollar signs, their comment would probably be like, I don't care, that's cool. Probably some blank, clueless expression on their face as well. Like, I like it anyway. Like, this is the same Malibu Stacy doll that we all bought last month. All they did was give her a new hat. This is ridiculous. And then they're like, but she's got a new hat. And everyone storms in and buys it anyway.
Yeah. Oh man. Um, let's swing this back around. What is some advice you would have for someone trying to break into this business?
Well, a couple of things would be, yeah,
Just advice
sure.
in general, health.
One thing is, of course, make sure you know what you're doing. Like, make sure that you're really good at your craft, but don't misinterpret that as you have to be completely ready. You're never going to be completely ready. I wasted a lot of time trying to be completely ready. Some of that stuff was out of my control because it was, jobs requiring a certain amount of software that I could not afford at the time. Other times, it wasn't that, but it was me thinking I wasn't ready. And just I wasted time because I wasn't ready yet. You know, you're not going to be ready. Be good at what you do, but don't wait to quote unquote be ready because you'll be waiting forever and then you're going to kick yourself in the ass 25 years from now. That would be one thing.
I love that advice.
And the second thing in relation to that is the worst that can happen is someone's going to say no. Don't be afraid to ask and inquire and be a squeaky wheel, even if it means you're being a pain in the ass sometimes, because half the time you think you're being a pain in the ass, but you're not actually being interpreted that way. You're in like 90% of the time, I've inquired about stuff and had to do it multiple times because someone might not have seen a message or an email or whatever it is that I sent. And, I'm like, I apologize. I sent this before. I don't want to overstep or anything. And 9 times out of 10, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't actually see the first one. No problem at all. So be a squeaky wheel and don't be afraid to ask and don't be afraid to hear no. And at the same time, don't be afraid to hear nothing. Because more times than not, you'll hear nothing instead of no. Part of that is there are people who literally will not see the messages or the forms of outreach that you send them, however you're trying to contact them. Part of the time, they will just not know. Or they'll lose track because it's easy to. And that's not on purpose. It's not intentional. It's not because they don't like you. On the other end.
No, people are busy, life happens. People are busy and sometimes shit just, you open that message and the next thing you know, something's knocking on your door, your phone closes and you have 100 other things going on. You forgot about that poor message, So like you said, I love it. Don't be a squeaky wheel because you may think you're being annoying, but there are those instances where people genuinely just, forgot and it's not from the heart. It's just shit happens.
There are at least 2 projects that I'm a part of right now that I'm only a part of because I was persistent and, I inquired early on and didn't hear jack shit. And I inquired again, and sometimes I had to inquire multiple times. And at the end of the day, it turned out to be something that was just a set of circumstances that kept them from getting back to me. That was nothing personal against me at all. And they actually ended up really liking me as an individual, really liking my music. And now I'm a part of those projects, And it is important to say this too, though. A good amount of the time, it's going to be the misunderstandings. Like I just said, they might just not even get what you're trying to send them or whatnot. And it's nothing personal. However, you're also going to deal with people who aren't going to get back to you or even give you a no. And it's just because they're being an asshole. All right. That's going to happen. You're going to come across people who are very self-important and think that they're a lot further along than they really are. And you're not going to get a no from them. You're going to get what some people like to call the Hollywood no, which is they're not going to say shit to you, or they're going to lead you on for a little bit and then not say shit to you. And that will happen sometimes. All right. Don't let it discourage you. Some people are just going to be assholes. And you know what? You don't want to work with an asshole. So if that happens for anyone who ends up experiencing this at some point, or if you already have for that matter, then it wasn't meant to be. Congratulations. You dodged the bullet of working with an asshole who was probably going to become an even bigger asshole by the time you started working with them for real. Okay? You'll meet the right people if you're a genuine individual, if you've got the talent for it, and if you just be persistent. So if there are things that don't work out, if some stuff doesn't work out, fuck it. you'll come across other stuff instead.
That is some great advice. I love that. Every single bit of that is absolutely. I really hope you guys heard that, because that was good advice. Just keep going and fuck anybody who tries to get in your way that, wants to be an asshole.
You'll, every now and then it's going to happen, and that's okay. That's just life.
All right. So I know I warned you earlier, but I found some more. So I am down to my last two questions now.
Yeah.
But before I get there, I want to give you an opportunity to just take the floor for a second and discuss anything that we might have missed, any upcoming promo you might want to talk about, or just
there's
whatever you want to
sure
bullshit.
thing. There are actually a few projects that I've been hoping to mention. The most immediate one I'll mention first, because I believe the director was actually on one of the podcasts with you, Frank, and that's for the project Wendigo and the Wicca, and that's one that I'm currently receiving some scenes for periodically as we speak. Frank Gordon is the director of that. Actually, it's George who put me in touch with you and this actual podcast. And so I really wanted to make sure that I mentioned that particular project, because George and I are both on that. I'm composing the music for it, and George and Trinity, they're also working on more of the soundtrack-oriented music for it. And so Wendigo and the Wicca, which is currently being filmed, it's about this ancient evil in this area that turns out to be a Wendigo, an ancient creature that periodically will regain a certain amount of power and start attacking people. And so there's a coven that needs to be brought into play in order to stop this. And it's a thing that has taken place more than once in this particular area's time on Earth. And so that's the basic story. I don't want to give away anything else, of course, but Wendigo and the Wicca is one to keep an eye on. I know that there's at least one Facebook page for it. The other would be, as I mentioned already.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you.
No, I wanted to just interrupt you for a second and give an extra shout out to my boy George Blunt, like you said, and Trinity, and again Frank Gordon. You guys go check out that episode that we did with them on the Wendigo and the Wicca that he's referring to right now on Hype AF. So go check that out. It was a really awesome episode, and I wanted to thank you because they've been giving me little hints that they were on a project, but they haven't told me which one.
Okay.
So thank you for that.
That might be a spoiler alert right there. But yeah, that's the one.
No, looks like they've been hitting at it, but they haven't told me which one.
Yeah, that is the one.
But yeah, go ahead and take it back, man. It's all
So
you.
as I mentioned, right, Dasher Slasher is the other one. I already talked about the story of that, but the short film for that probably will be coming my way to score the music in the next couple of weeks or so. And
what happened there? All right, you guys. Well, not quite sure what happened. I'll hang out here for a second. Luckily, we are close to the end, but just in case he pops back in, we're going to give him that opportunity. In the meantime, let's do some shout outs to those who popped in. Thank you, Wifey, for tuning in as always. Lars Lufbaru, I hope I said that right. Thank you for tuning in. Jessica, thank you for tuning in, cuz it's always good to see you. And I see a couple more people watching. Tyler Berserker, thank you for tuning in over on Twitch. I appreciate you, man. And anyone else who is watching, if you want to shout out, just drop a comment and I will give you a little hey. And I can see him trying to come back in, so we are going to hang out a little longer to see if... There we go.
You got me?
There it is. I got you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Not sure if you heard me cursing the phone out.
Not a problem. It happens. It happens often, and I do it often.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So the other project that I was mentioning, sorry about that. But one that I wanted to talk about was The Legend of the Bushkill Witch. That was the other one that I didn't mention at all. That's another one from the same guy, Paul Sutt, that did the Hunt Chase Kill film. So in Easton, PA, there's a place called Bushkill Park. It's a very, very old-timey park. It's been around for a while. It has what might be the oldest standing funhouse in the United States. I might be a little off on that, but it's at least up there. It's over 100 years old. And they're creating, they've been doing this thing where they have like a haunt every year. And so not just a little old-timey funhouse, but now they have like a built set that they'll create like a whole haunted walkthrough and whatnot. And they've been very elaborate with it this year. And so Paul has actually been working with them, and he created a short film called The Legend of the Bushkill Witch. And at least part of the story is based on actual events, whether those were accurate events or they were kind of word of mouth or a little of both. And so this particular short film, which I use the word short in quotations because, yeah, it's not a full length, but it's going to be about like 40 or 45 minutes long. And we started filming it yesterday. So we went up to the park, and the film takes place now, with the exception of some flashbacks, and it's a callback to that legend that this place is using as their haunt in the movie. It takes place on Halloween, but it turns out that the legend's actually real, and the people at the park are in a little more danger than they realize. And so they're being set up for something, basically. And these guys created these gigantic sets throughout the park for the film, and it's a double benefit. It's working for the film itself, but then all the sets are actually going to be part of the haunted walkthrough. So when you go and visit it, you'll see the short film, and then you'll actually do the walkthrough as well. And so I'll be doing the music for it, but it's one of the ones I'm acting in as well. He had a bunch of, he let people know, hey, I need a bunch of extras, and then he kind of contacted his core people and were like, hey, would you like to be this part, that part for this film? And so the first day of shooting, which was the main day, was yesterday. They're going to film a little more Wednesday, and then they've got like a final day where they're going to do a night shoot in September. And I actually was a part of that. So the short film is supposed to be ready to where they're going to actually, I believe, have it available and drop it. It might be probably on YouTube by October 1st. That's the goal. And so it'll work as a short film, but also in connection to the actual park and the haunt that they're going to do as well. So I actually, in addition to composing the music for that, I ended up acting in it as well. This ended up going all over the place because there were some cast changes that were very last minute. People got sick and whatnot. So I originally was just going to be a background character. Okay, cool. And then he realized I could be there for the September day as well. He's like, well, wait a minute, let me make you one of the main killers then. Cool. And because the witch has like these hooded people, these druid-looking people walking around, like taking people and killing them. And so, okay, cool. So yesterday comes along, and while he's in the car on the way to the place, and I'm about to leave and meet all of them there, he's like, how far away are you? Yeah, so-and-so isn't going to be able to make it. And he has a speaking role, and we needed to film his stuff first because of events taking place in the park. Like, we only have this certain spot where this scene has to happen for so long. So I need you to fill in and do his part instead. Okay, fine. So I get there, and I'm like given the script now, and I haven't had a chance to look at it or anything because I was going to be a different person, and the guy got sick. So I'm like really quickly looking over the lines, like, okay, cool. And they're probably gonna have to tell me some of the lines as we go because I got 2 minutes to look at it before we had to go. Like, and the people are now waving us over, saying like, party's gonna start soon. You got like maybe 4 minutes to film this, and so I filmed the parts and whatnot. It ended up working out fine, and the whole day I ended up doing a dual role. So every now and then I'd have to like I had a leather vest on or whatnot, and all right, put that on, standing out in like 95-degree weather, and I'm that character. And then for the other half of the day, I had to take the vest off. Now I'm putting like this cloak and like a black robe on, and I had to grab a mask. They had all these different masks, and there was like this cool devil mask that was like this bright red color, and I was like, this looks different than the other ones. If we film anything in a dark room, that's gonna pop. Let me use that. And so half the day I'm like in a leather vest for one guy, and that's making me sweat. The other half of the day I'm in a like a cloak and a hood, and it's long sleeve, and I got a mask over my face, and I can literally feel like the sweat dropping off parts of the mask and like hitting my neck and stuff, you know. But it worked out really well. I ended up playing two characters, and we had to do like a couple of, you know, mini stunts to where a guy got like grabbed and headlocked and pulled into another room and stuff. And so it was a lot of fun. We probably will have a messier day in September because that's the day when we're going to do like the on-screen kills. And so I'll be putting that mask back on, and I get the impression that that'll probably involve a lot more blood and probably some body parts as well. But that'll be coming out. I think, as far as I know, the date hasn't changed. I think it's going to drop on October 1st, and that will probably be YouTube. If I'm wrong, I'll get back to you about that. But I know it's going to drop October 1st.
And did you the name of that one more time?
The Legend of the Bushkill Witch.
Man, that sounds like a blast, man.
It was a fun time.
Being a part of a haunted house / slasher movie / man, that just sounds so cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Real cool time. The one other project would be the Jason film that I'm a part of. There are a lot of fan films in the Friday the 13th world right now. Are you familiar with the fact that that's like kind of a big booming thing?
I guess I didn't that there were fan films going down.
Yeah,
I know that they're a big cult hit in general.
So for almost a decade, there have been this huge influx on YouTube of Friday the 13th fan films because it's been so long since we've gotten an actual movie, an official movie. And the reason being that the main people involved in the creation of that franchise have been practically at legal war with each other over the rights and who can do what for all these years. It's actually the only reason why that video game that came out in like 2018, the Friday the 13th one, that game went under because after a certain point, it was no longer legally allowed to add any new content. And so after a certain point, they were forced to take the game off. That's the reason that game died, which was real disappointing. But it's also the reason we, up until very recently, we're not getting any kind of official film from a major studio for Friday the 13th. So fans decided to take this into their own hands. Like, oh, screw this shit. We'll just make it ourselves. And that varies in quality. And I'm not trying to like shit on anybody when I say that, but it varies in quality. Every now and then you'll have a Friday the 13th film that it's not going to look like a professional film. It might be something that like at a barbecue you put on with some friends and family and be like, hey, look at what we made, you know? But then you've got some other ones that look insanely professional, like to the point to where you're like, that was good enough to be a real movie and should actually be the next movie. My favorite one being, if you want to check one out, check out the Never Hike Alone movies. They're fan films. You cannot legally make a profit off of them. You can pay your cast and crew because that's just a job that they're doing, but you cannot make a profit, any kind of residual profit off of any of them because it's, an IP that already is owned. And so they have to just drop the stuff on YouTube and make it for free when they're done. So Never Hike Alone was like the huge series of those fan films. There were a couple of them and they're fantastic. And then Friday the 13th Vengeance was a couple of films as well. There are others. There are many, many others. But there's one coming out that Brandon is the name of the guy who's creating it. Brandon Parmley. He is writing and directing, and he also designed the mask and the headpiece as well for Jason, because he can do that level of effects as well. And it's just simply called Jason Chapter 1. And there's at least going to be a second and third chapter, possibly a fourth. Each one is a full-length movie. And they're filming that in Massachusetts sometime next year, I believe. I know that they got enough stuff together for a trailer. And I'm going to be setting the music for the trailer not very long from now. And they're going to have an Indiegogo campaign probably pop up in the next month or so, give or take. But he's retelling the whole story. It's basically a remake or a reboot. And with some little things changed around, like the timeline is different. Instead of Jason being a kid in like the 50s or 60s, and then like the events of the movie start in like 1979, the events with Jason as a kid take place in 1990. And so the timeline's a little different. It's kind of updated for how you can just do things now. And certain details are changed around in ways that kind of make it a little more personal for the Jason character and also his mother. It's a rather good script. I read the thing, he sent it to me, and so I'll be working on the music for that, which I'm super excited about because Friday the 13th is my favorite slasher franchise. Like Jason was the one that got grafted onto me. He was the first one that I saw in a theater, so that was kind of a no-brainer for me,
Absolutely. So, I mean, since you brought it up and you said that's your favorite franchise, do you have a favorite film overall?
I can't say if I've got a favorite film overall because it's just there are too many different styles of film. So I already know that if I say one or two, it's like, well, then I like this thing about that one. I like that thing about that. I'd have to be like, all right, there's a certain handful of ones that are some of my favorites and most influential and stuff like that. I'm joking to death. Give me a sec. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is getting a little hoarse. But out of the slasher franchises, the Friday the 13th is my favorite. Out of just movies in general, a couple. I mean, I love the first two Alien films, and I know you'll get people who are in a certain camp of they like Alien better than Aliens, and others like Aliens better. I like them both kind of evenly. I can't really say I like one better than the other because they're very different types of films, and you can kind of say the same thing about the Terminator films, the first two. I love those, and the original RoboCop, and I love The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing is like almost a perfect movie, and it's definitely a perfect horror movie. I mean, you couldn't have made that movie any better. Between the practical effects, the way the movie was actually shot, the cinematography is beautiful in that film. And then the music from not just John Carpenter, but he brought Ennio Morricone to do the music for that one, which was kind of off script for Carpenter since he usually just exclusively did the music himself. But Ennio Morricone, known more for like the spaghetti westerns, like he did A Fistful of Dollars for a Few Dollars More, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But he did such an amazing job with that horror film score that it's one of my favorites. I mean, there's just a certain orchestral touch to that he did in a very specific way, and it kind of just again got kind of grafted onto me because I saw it when I was very young, and I'd say
I love that.
Oh yeah,
I just love that I interview so many musicians that you just kind of are doing a different form of music. They're not into the composition and stuff like that. It's more the vocal aspect and stuff like that. So to talk to you, you're a perfect example of, how deep music can affect people. Like when I ask you about a movie, you ultimately resort back to the music in this movie, and that's awesome. It just shows how it all comes together, and it's so important. Music is so important in your life and in so many ways that completely go unnoticed. And it's like you've tapped into that. You're like, you watch a movie and you're sucking in all of these things and you're absorbing the music, whereas I'm gonna just guess probably over 50% of us, those thoughts never even really cross our mind. We might jump in an intense scene, but we're not thinking about, oh wow, the music placement right there is perfect, like just, and you're so in tuned into that. It's amazing.
A big thing. I think a lot of people do realize that stuff, but it's very subconscious. Like they might, even if they can't put their finger on it and like articulate, oh, this thing happened there and that's why that works. I think at a subconscious level, they kind of get it and realize that,
Yeah, I think you knew what I was trying to say. The words weren't coming out, but that's exactly what I was meaning. Subconsciously, like you've tapped into that. Like we know it's happening, but you're extra aware of it, and that's just what I mean by how music affects us in ways that some of us don't even, we're not even realizing.
Yeah. I got a movie for you. Actually, I'll give you two. in the event that either you haven't seen them or in the event that anyone listening to this hasn't seen them. And I recommend them, one, because they're just excellent movies. Two, they've got fantastic musical scores. But three, they're some of the wildest rides as a movie that you'll take as well. One is a movie called Jacob's Ladder. And I'm talking about the original. They made some shitty remake. I'm talking about the original. It came out, I believe, in 1990 or very close to 1990. Tim Robbins plays the main character in it. Watch the movie Jacob's Ladder. That movie, I don't want to give anything away about it. It's one of those movies you should just sit and watch. Maybe be a little mentally prepared, but just sit and watch. Now, I will say this, because other movies, and I'm being vague on purpose, because other movies have come out since that movie, it might be a little easier to read. But that might not be the case. With all that said, watch that film. It's actually probably one of the, if you're a fan of the Silent Hill games at all, that movie probably had more of an influence on those games than anything else. As far as the aesthetic goes, you'll know what I mean when certain shit starts to happen in the movie. But Maurice Jarre is the composer. He was like an old school composer. He also did the music for the movie Ghost and like a whole bunch of other stuff. But Jacob's Ladder is probably my favorite music of his, because it is just emotionally very very intense, and there are these other moments to where it's just flat out disturbing. The other one is as far as a more recent film. By more recent, I'll say like within the last decade, so it's not like, you know, a year or two ago. But have you seen Mandy by chance?
It sounds familiar.
Got Nicolas Cage in it.
Have we seen Mandy with Nicolas Cage? I don't think so.
Okay, that's one of those movies to where, like, I didn't want to interrupt you, but if you're not sure, you've definitely not seen it. It's one of it leaves a mark. Panos Cosmatos was the director, and he's a very, very visually unique individual. And Johan Johansson's the name of the guy that did the music for it. But it's another one of those movies. I'm not going to say shit about it because it would kind of ruin the experience. But that's one of those movies, maybe be a little mentally prepared for a bit of a ride, but kind of walk into it as cold as possible, knowing as little of it as you can, and just kind of expect a bit of a wild movie. It instantaneously became one of my favorite movies after I watched it. It is a fucking trip of a movie. That's yeah. I'm not going to give away anything, but the music definitely has a huge role in that movie, and how that movie feels as the scenes move on. But the visual aesthetic is amazing. It is some of the most well-directed stuff I've seen. Cinematography is phenomenal in the movie. So those would be the two that I'd recommend.
I wrote down every single one that you've recommended, so I am super excited to go have a whole bunch of new stuff to watch, because I've been watching reruns for God knows how long. I need some new content, so that is appreciated. I'm definitely going to be checking those out.
Oh, awesome.
So, I mean, man, you've had some pretty hype moments, and you told us quite a few already, but because this is Hype AF, I'm going to have to ask you to dig deep and tell us one of your most hype moments, if you haven't already. Or tell us another one, even if you did.
I mean, I said a lot of stuff already, but a real cool one was probably, if we're relating it back to cinema anyway, like any stuff involving film, when I got on the set of Hunt, Chase, Kill, I originally, when I reached out to them, I was like, hey, you mind if I just get on the set and meet you guys in person? You know, yeah, sure, no problem. That'd be great. If you want, you can be an extra in the film as well. Like, we need some background guys because we're filming these scenes in a bar. All right, cool. Actually, if you come the next day after that as well, if you want to be one of the guys who gets killed, you can do that too. And so that was a lot of fun. So the second day that I'm on set is this moment where a bunch of people in the movie, there are these three brothers who are killers. And so there's a certain part in the movie where a bunch of people at this bar disperse and they go to where these individuals live. They're looking for a missing person. And probably was like the worst idea they could have come up with, because now they're on their turf, and these guys have been doing this for a while. But of course, one by one, people start getting killed, and so I was one of the guys that ends up getting killed. I took it upon myself. I found a baseball bat in the trunk of the director's car, and in my mind, I was like, well, wouldn't it make sense for someone to bring a weapon with them as opposed to just showing up completely unprepared? And so we ended up creating the scene where the bat got used against me. And so, like, there's this moment where I'm like walking down a corridor with the bat, and eventually one of the killers sees me, and there's this struggle that ensues, and it leads to this death scene that we ended up having to do, which was a lot of fun because I hadn't done something like that before. I've prior to that, I maybe acted in a couple of little things, like little roles for fun on something a friend was doing or whatnot, but nothing to that caliber. So it was a lot of fun doing something like that.
You got killed with your own weapon, man.
Yeah.
Ah.
That,
shit.
and there's stuff I can't mention yet, so it'll probably be for another episode. But there's stuff that I found out about, and I want to make sure it gets confirmed. But there are 2 or 3 things that'll definitely be hype candidates for a later point in time. I can't say anything about them yet.
Hey, I'll look forward to it, and I'll be here when you're ready to talk about them. I do have one other question before I get to my last one.
Sure.
I seen something about you guys in the Texas Chainsaw Badlands movie. Did you guys get to use like the original mask or something in that as well?
Oh, the thing. Are you talking about I left a little clue about the mask and that thing that I posted?
Yeah.
So no, they didn't use the original mask. They wouldn't have been able to. That thing is destroyed by now, because if I recall correctly, I think that was actually made with a layer of skin and or latex that dried out and whatnot. But have you seen the original film?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you notice the main mask he was wearing for the movie? So not the opening scene, but the rest of the movie, he's got that other old man looking mask on, right? So does that look familiar? If you think back to the first film.
I spoke too much, dude. No.
I don't want to give it away, but if you go back and watch it, it'll probably be very obvious now that I'm saying it. As soon as you see it in the movie, you'll be like, oh shit, okay, that's what he's talking about, like one of those things. But so for yourself, but also anyone else who's watching and paying attention here, if you end up seeing the Badlands film, it is on YouTube, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Badlands. It's just a short right now. It's only about 20 minutes, and I am hoping that at some point down the road they circle back around to that, because they were talking about doing a full-length version of it, which would be great. But he has 2 different masks on. You'll know if you watch the film, and I'm not really giving anything away because you see him with one mask in the opening scene, and he's got a completely different mask on for the entire rest of the movie. It's not some reveal. It's just more of a nod. But the second mask, the one that he's wearing throughout almost the whole film, it's a mask of a specific person. So if for anybody who's seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, the 1974 film, or who might just need to watch it for the first time or rewatch it to catch what I'm talking about here, there's a certain family member, and if you pick up what I'm putting down here, you probably will know what I mean. But there's a certain family member that they show in the original film, and he'll be very recognizable, especially if you end up watching Badlands. You'll probably make the connection a little easily.
All right. So in other words, there's an Easter egg in there for you guys. All the more reason to go check it out. And I did. It's worth checking out. All of them are. I'm gonna, like I said again, I'm gonna have all of the ones that are available to watch or that have trailers or something right now attached to the description of this video, so you guys can find them easily. And if not, what you should be doing anyway is making sure you're following my guest, and I'm sure he would be more than happy to send you a link to anything that you heard him talk about today and are interested in.
Yeah,
if
I mean, I'm
available.
on Facebook. I also have a YouTube channel as well. If you
There
need me
you
to,
go.
I can
So,
send that to you.
please do. Please do. I will absolutely link that to the video as well.
All right, awesome.
All right. So the last question of the show. I am an Uber Dinosaurs fan. You might have picked that up. I've seen you tap into a few episodes. But the last question of the day is, I got to know what your favorite dinosaur is.
Probably Triceratops. He was my favorite since I was a kid, and so I'm just going to stick with that. Outside of that, the two who came close after that would probably be Monoclonius and T-Rex, because they were the two that I remember fighting each other in a special documentary recreation that I saw as a kid.
Nice. You threw out. Say that one again. I can't even pronounce that one.
Monoclonius.
See?
He was a lot like the Triceratops, but as the name says, he only has one horn as opposed to three.
Damn, dropping the dino knowledge on the Dino Master. That's crazy. Hell yeah, that's how it's done. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming on the show and hanging out with us. And, as you mentioned earlier, the doors are always open. So next time you got sounds like you got multiple, but next time they're ready to come be talked about, hit me up and we'll chat about it again.
Absolutely. I'd love to. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Absolutely, my guy. I would like to send you off today with, hopes of, usually it's 1 billion streams, but I guess in your case, streams, views, I hope you hit a theater with one of your films. And I
Yeah.
hope, you get to work with some of these incredible, big time directors and producers out there, and you make it big, homie. That's my hope for you.
I hope so. Like I said, there are a couple of things that are more recent info, and some was mentioned to me a little while ago that might get circulated back to. But I don't want to count them before they hatch, and I want to make sure everything is official, and I get the permission and the green light as well to talk about them before anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah, we like to follow the rules here, so that's fine with me. We don't want to sneak anything out that's not supposed to be out. So all good, man. I look forward to all of these projects that are about to come out. I'm gonna go watch this Texas Chainsaw again so that I could find this little Easter egg that I missed the first time. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me today. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and I just want to thank you one more time for coming and getting hype with us.
Same to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, yeah, you have a good rest of your day, man.
You as well. Have a good one.
All right, you guys. That is Bobby Carra. Like I said, there are links attached to the video currently. I'm going to download this, get it uploaded to all of those other wonderful streaming platforms. If you missed any of it, go rewatch it because it is live on YouTube right now, and I will be attaching all of the extra links to that right after this show. So refresh the page within the next 20 minutes, and you'll see a couple more links pop up. Go check out, please follow my guests, watch some of these movies. The spew, it's never required, but it's always appreciated. If you wanted to donate some stars, or if you wanted to donate directly, you can do that by hitting the link in my bio. Never required, but it is always appreciated. Thanks to all of my viewers for tuning in. You guys are awesome. I hope you had an awesome show with me. And I don't see any more new comments, so if I didn't shout you out, I apologize. I didn't see you. And that's it for today's show. Much love. Mad Whack out.